Special treat for you today, people of Detroit. We have a special debate between Ensign Chekov and Lieutenant Chekov and Walter Koenig. Let's hear a nice round of applause for both of them.
My name is Chekov. The topic of this afternoon's debate, the human being versus the heroic alter ego, or more precisely, shall it be better to be a human person and stumble along on the mortal's coil spanning 70 and experiencing all manner of insufferable indignity resulting in depression and rejection and oppression, or to be a heroic alter ego and soar among the stars in an epic life of mythical proportions. Representing the human person is Walter Koenig. Representing the heroic alter ego is me, Commander Chekov. We will hear first the opening comments of Mr. Koenig. Thank you, but that's Koenig. Well, I think the advantages in being the human being are self-evident. I mean, look at me. Must be. Here I am, fully dimensional, flesh and blood, not a alter ego concoction of some hack swimming caprice, not a purple prose product plucked from the printed page, but a human being, an inspiration, many years in the crafting, a fine blend of passion, perception, and philanthropy. God's work, nature's pride. My God, I think I'm going to be sick. Can you believe this Cossack? This is a noble piece of work, ladies and gentlemen, who got caught sitting on the john with his pants down in an airplane bathroom. Don't worry, I read that book you wrote. Ladies and gentlemen, he writes a book all about himself, but he puts my name on the cover in order to sell it. Now that's way out of line. What was out of line were all the people who were milling around outside waiting for an autograph when the doors swung open. Incidentally, the autograph they wanted was mine, not yours. Now, telling that story is really hitting below the belt. But since you're so intent on toilet tales, what about the time in Spacey, when Mr. Khan first came aboard the Enterprise and you hadn't even graduated to the bridge yet, you were still working on the third deck behind the boiler room. And we're so sick with Malachowski's malady, a 23rd century version of Montezuma's Revenge, that you hid yourself away in the bathroom. We were there for hours and hours while poor Mr. Khan, his genetically engineered kidneys, about to explode. Again and again on the bathroom door, begging to be let in until finally the door opened and he grabbed you and said, "Your face, I would never forget." Can you believe this ridiculous person? Why do you keep telling people I was in Spacey? I was never in Spacey. And speaking of heroic, what about that time in Deadly Years when you had that surge of adrenaline and didn't grow old because you were so frightened? You forget. If it wasn't for me sacrificing my body to science, Dr. McCoy would never have found an antidote. It was my unselfishness that saved the crew. Oh, sure, I remember. More skin samples, Chekov, more blood samples, Chekov. To keep this up, I'm going to run out of samples. You are not the pleasant person. You also forget how in trouble retrievals, how I fought and risked my life against the Klingons because they insulted Captain Kirk, the finest captain in the Federation. Would you have done the same for William Shatner? Don't talk to me about courage. You're right, I shouldn't. I mean, I know this guy's coming out with a Chekov doll with an alarm clock in it. It doesn't have a bell, but you can set it so that in 15 minutes, it screams. That was not very nice. That was not very nice. You also forget that, what else? Well, go ahead. Little think about it. Okay. Well, you forget that, please, afterwards, words will scream. Right now we're trying to get it. I have gone up, as they say in the business. Anyway, were you talking about yourself for a few minutes while I wonder what I am?
Line, please.
Okay.
Two cards.
Well, so far I think it's even. What do you think? Okay. God, I don't know. Okay, let's go on to something else. If I can remember the rest of it, I'll come back to it. Why don't we pick up some questions and go from there, okay? Yes?
Not doing any more screaming, any more Star Trek?
Not in Star Trek 3. I do not scream in Star Trek 3. Yes?
What was the hardest Star Trek episode for you to do yourself personally?
Hardest one? Probably the first one because I was most nervous. But it was a relatively easy situation for me. The dialect wasn't difficult to do, and the part was never that demanding. There were episodes that were more fun than others, but none that I recall as being particularly hard. Yeah.
Do you have a certain nationality to give an accent in the show?
Well, I'm of
Where have you
my
been?
parents are from Lithuania, so I'm of Russian extraction. They both spoke Russian.
I'll bite. Which was the most fun?
Which was the most fun to do, that episode? I think probably the ones where I got to kiss the girl or something like that. Spectre of the Gun, Cup of the Apple. I like doing I Mud. That was fun. That was a good show. Yeah.
I've heard two explanations of why they put Chekov in. One was because Pravda said that there should be a Russian in it, and the other one was just because they wanted somebody to identify with the young people. Which is the real reason why you got in?
Probably had nothing to do with the decision. That was entirely a concoction of the studio. The Russians didn't know anything about Star Trek, and they certainly didn't know anything about my character. I think they were looking for somebody I know they were looking for somebody to appeal to the young people. At that time, the Monkees was a very popular television show, and they were looking for somebody who could approximate the image projected by Davy Jones.
There's been talk that Chekov was Captain Kirk's protege or Spock's protege. Which do you think he was?
Well, I don't really know. I don't think any conscious determination was ever made on that basis. I think it's merely speculation. He had the same color shirt that Captain Kirk had, so I imagine he was supposed to be in line for leadership and captaincy at some point. But he also worked with the Spock on a couple of occasions, so he was sort of a jack of all trades. Yeah. They have long ago discarded. They were torn up, used for other sets, given away to UCLA to use as flats for little theater productions. No one ever conceived the possibility that we might go on and do more Star Treks. So it was when Gene Roddenberry called us on that fateful April day, and said that the show had been canceled. We really thought that was the end of Star Trek. We had no idea that it would ever come back in any form. Yeah.
In the roughest time, was there any actual creatures? You know?
Yeah, they were stunt bugs. Look at they were just little rubbery plastic creatures. They dipped in some kind of awful goo, and they pulled them across our faces with a very thin filament, with a filament wire. If you noticed, when the thing was going up our Paul Winfield's and my face, at the beginning, the shot was very, very tight. You didn't even see the top of the helmet. The reason you didn't see the top of the helmet is because they cut a hole in it. And they had a guy standing above us. They messed the creature up. When it finally came out later on, it was the same kind of situation. When I fell down on the floor of the cave, the next shot where the thing comes out of my ear was shot 3 months later up at ILM, and I was lying on a table covered with the same material that the floor had been covered with. And there was a guy underneath the table. They drilled a hole in the table, and they used the guy. It's a very interesting story about the nature of effects people. You know, they stuffed it into my ear, and I had all this, you know, all the goo and all the other stuff on it. And as they started to pull it out, it was a shot without sound, so they could be commenting behind the camera. So as it started to come out, I heard, "Oh my God! Oh, that's wonderful!" And then finally, when you saw it actually in all its living, breathing glory, that was a finger puppet. And it was not my ear, but it was a big 9-inch sculpture of my ear. And they just poked it through, and some of these fingers were inside it.
Why did you decide not to come back for the cartoon series?
It wasn't my decision. It was a problem with seniority. Filmation, which, as you probably know, is an incredibly cheap outfit, based on the quality of their cartoons, decided they couldn't have everybody. And in fact, they didn't want George or Nichelle either. They wanted, when you sign a voiceover cartoon contract, you decided to do your voice and at least 2 others. So they were going to have Jimmy do George's voice and Majel Barrett do Nichelle's. Leonard, to his credit, Leonard Nimoy, refused to do the cartoon unless they included George and Nichelle as original members of the cast. So they were forced to do that. They did not feel the same obligation to me. I was the second year, I came in the second year, and I guess they didn't feel I was as responsible for the show's success. In any case, they tried to compensate by offering me some shows to write. I wrote one of the animated shows. I was offered to write another one, and I rejected that idea. I wasn't too crazy about what I had to go through to do the first one. So it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't on my volition. It was a decision that was made on my behalf. Yeah.
What exactly was Gene Reimer as part of that creative responsibility?
Oh, practically nothing. He would read the scripts. He would have input. He would be like, you know, they asked him for his input. He would make suggestions, but they were not bound in any way to go forward with what he suggested.
Oh.
And I don't think in most cases they did.
One more thing. What was your reaction to finding out that you were taking over the major part of the Track and Lulu working with the end?
I don't remember that as being the circumstances. George had left for 10 weeks to do a Green Beret film, and I didn't know him then. He wasn't even on the show at that point. They kept giving me shows because George's tour on that film was extended. So I wasn't aware of any specific show that I got because he wasn't there. On the other hand, I know that when I went off for a month to do a play, he ended up doing the episode that I was supposed to do, where Kirk says, if I wanted something I would have had Chekov along, whatever that episode was. I'm sure somebody here probably knows what I'm referring to. Yeah, if I wanted Russian history, I would have had Chekov along. That was the show that I was supposed to do. Yeah.
Yes, is it really true that just the response from fans brought it off the production of the 3rd season? Because they were thinking of canceling right after the
I think that's true. I think it's true in regard to the 2nd season. There was such a militant and vociferous support on the side of the fans that they felt that it would be imprudent not to bring the show back. Do you think you could hold that down now and stop it for a while? Terrific. It was a wonderful experience. He's very sensitive, very well prepared. He really cared about the actors and dealt with us all on an individual basis. I had no way of knowing this because playing Spock, he's even off camera he was rather distant and aloof and in general a pain in the ass. But when he dropped that character, he became a very human, very approachable person, and it was really very neat working with him. I think we all felt that way.
I'd like to know if you started writing before you started acting, and have you known anything like before you started
No, I didn't start writing before I started acting. In fact, I started writing only after we were canceled. And the phone didn't ring for a year. Right? There was not one interview, not one anything, for a year. And I sat down and I wrote a novel that was never published. It was sort of a satirical science fiction comedy kind of thing. But the writing became serious after I wrote a screenplay that received some favorable reaction and got me an agent. And then I started writing more seriously.
Do you have any one favorite case that you wrote?
I've written? Yeah, I have a screenplay that I'm particularly proud of, but it's apparently never going to get made. It's called The Ghost Walker, and it's about an American Indian who comes out of the reservation with his culture and integrity intact, and has to do battle against the forces of modern day, and ultimately succeeds. Ultimately proves victorious. As I say, it's a piece. I think it's the best thing I've done, and it's gotten me some writing jobs, just on the basis of having people reading it. But it has never been produced. It's considered too soft. It doesn't have a big enough hook to sell. Yes.
Could you scream for us?
No, I'm not going to scream for you.
So, since Captain Carroll is dead, in the next movie or for future films after that, is there any chance that we could see a Captain Chekov in any?
Well, it certainly is a nice thing to think about. If this picture's any indication, I would say no. There isn't that much, unlike the Star Wars saga, there isn't any real logical chronology in our pictures. It's true that this Star Trek III takes place immediately after Star Trek II, but in terms of growing up in rank, in terms of that sort of thing, there isn't a great deal of logic.
I also read in the Best of Trek 3 an interview that you had, and you said that there in your contract said more possible new series, which I don't think there will be, just motion pictures. Is there any chance of another movie after this?
Well, the indications are that this is going to be an immensely successful film. At least the studio is very, very excited about it. Gene Roddenberry, as a matter of fact, who did not have, as I say, much to do with it, and if anybody might entertain sour grapes, it would be he, saw a rough cut and thought it was the best Star Trek ever. So I think we should, if that is the case, and if the fans respond accordingly, then there will undoubtedly be a Star Trek 4. However, I've also heard that both Bill and Leonard were approached about doing it as a series again, and quite recently, and neither was unqualifiedly against it. Bill was tied up with a series, and Leonard wavered. He didn't say no immediately, but I think he did ultimately. In any case, I think the studio feels that you have to have at least one of the two for them to go into a series. So, who knows, maybe down the line, maybe when the box office starts to dwindle on the Star Trek films, they will go back to a television series. Yes?
Does the cast miss Gene Roddenberry's presence?
Well, I think we miss him as the creator of the show. There has to be a certain loyalty and affection for the man who played us all originally. I think we all remain friends with him. Those of us who were friends with him to begin with. Yeah. No. It's too late now. Go ahead. People shouldn't have shouted out at that time. It threw me off a little. Yeah.
How would you like to see Chekov's character expanded if there are future movies?
I think the basis of any good acting role is conflict. The chance to deal with some situation, individual, entity, whatever, that causes you to react with some emotional turmoil. And I think anything that would be along those lines, where Chekov has to make a decision or has to deal with some antagonist that calls forth some, relatively profound emotional reaction, would be exciting to perform. As a matter of fact, in this film, I think the best part of the film is DeForest Kelly's, because he is the most troubled. He is the one that has the most psychological. He's being tortured psychologically by events, and I think it's the meatiest role and the one that I would love to play myself. It's very small. My role in Star Trek 3. It's in fact, what do you Americans say? It sucks, is what it does. However, I am resigned to that, and with good nature, I think, at this point, perhaps not initially. I needed to have a broader overview, and I see that it's only fair that the other people, the other supporting actors, be given more to do. I had the better part among the supporting people in Star Trek 2. And to be short, George has some really cute things. He gets to do some martial arts in Star Trek 3. Michelle has a scene where she vamps a young lieutenant. And I think she has the funniest line in the film. And Jimmy's dialogue is very, very, very funny and very humorous. And I think that they are all shown to good advantage in Star Trek 3. Yes.
How do you like working with Jimmy doing?
Jimmy's terrific. I like working with everybody, with maybe one exception. We're a good group. We're a good family. We've always gotten along very well, and I think we pull for each other. I really do. I know that when we saw the screening of Star Trek 2, the very first people who came up to me were DeForest, Jimmy, George, and Michelle, and said, nice work, and it worked well. And of course, I feel the same for them. Yes?
Which do you think is the very best Star Trek episode ever made?
Well, I like, and it's purely personal, the reasons, but I like The City on the Edge of Forever.
Was, I think, one of the very best.
Yeah, I really like that. That story had the most compassion. It's infrequent that a TV episode of anything, a TV film, can move me, can suck me in. There's just the difference in the small screen and you makes it difficult to get involved and absorbed. It's unlike a movie screen where you're there and there's a 20-foot screen and a 50-foot screen and you kind of get, enveloped by it. So it's infrequent that happens. But I like that one very much for that reason, and I also like Two Mornings for Adonais for that reason. It was a classic story of the flawed superhero, flawed omnipotent character.
I think that episode also gave you an opportunity to expand on your character.
Yeah, that was fun
You
too.
were acting parts in there for really the first time in the series.
Right. But I particularly like the character of the Michael Forrest, was it? Michael Forrest played. Yeah.
Did you ever fantasize about being Chekov? Did you really get into the role?
No, I never fantasized about being Chekov.
Referring back to the TV show, you said that they approached folks to no matter. Does that mean that Spock is back in the...
No, they were thinking of having Spock come back as a, what can I tell you? Yes.
Do you feel like you ever missed out on anything by not being in the Star Trek series in the beginning?
It's conceivable. I'm not prepared to make that statement categorically. The industry changes constantly. If you look at the number of people who were series leads 5 years ago, the next question is whatever happened to. So frequently, an actor is identified with a role and is loved for that part, and then when the series is over, he has difficulty finding work. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are typecast. It does mean that we have so many people. We have 50,000 members of the Screen Actors Union, because they're active members of the union, and perhaps 125 roles available each week. The competition is extraordinary, and they're always looking for new faces. And as the industry changes, and as time goes by, the demands change as well. I think we're going through a cycle now where films are geared most strongly towards the from 15 to 25, 15 to 30 age group. And if you're going to do films for that age group, everything from Porky's to the Hotel New Hampshire that's current. You have to have people that you have to have the leading characters, people that the audience can identify with. So you have very young people in the roles. You have people in their early 20s, middle 20s, playing those roles. Because that's why the audience goes. They want to be able to identify with the characters. So I think there are a host of reasons for the dearth of opportunity that I've experienced, that other people in the cast have experienced. A portion of which may have to do with being typecast, but certainly the great majority, in my opinion, has to do with all the other ramifications of being in an industry where the supply so far exceeds the demand. Yes, in the red jacket.
How did you like working with Ricardo Montalban?
Terrific. Ricardo is a marvelous, bigger-than-life gentleman. No petulance, no problems of vanity. He was very amenable. He was willing to try anything that the director suggested. He was a delight. He was a charming man, off-screen as well as on. He was a charming man. Yeah, agreed.
What have you, in between the Star Trek TV series and the motion pictures, what have you been doing, and to what do you attribute your major role in Star Trek 2?
Well, let me answer the second question first. I think it's luck, happenstance. It was not on the basis of merit, on the basis of talent. God knows I think I deserved it, but the choice wasn't made on that basis. The feeling was that, in fact, I don't know if George is even aware of this. I think originally it was written for George, but Harv Bennett, my understanding, felt that my character would be more vulnerable and would be more appropriate for that particular part. And it was on that basis. What was the first part of the question? What have I been doing in between?
Yeah.
Well, as I say, I've done some writing. I've sold scripts to about half a dozen television series. I've taught from time to time. I taught at UCLA. I taught at a professional film school in Los Angeles, and I taught privately. That kind of thing. I've done some stage directing in Los Angeles. Over the course of the years, that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Was there any humorous parts in the series or the television series or the movies that weren't on blooper reels that we never saw?
Well, the only thing that happened to me in Star Trek 2, I get so confused. Yeah, Star Trek 2. You know, after I get zapped and I fall down and I step out of the elevator. Remember that? And I come back on the bridge and I say, "Can you use another hand?" Well, that was my first. I mean, talk about going up. That was my first appearance in the film. My first appearance on the set. We were shooting all the bridge scenes in sequence, and so I wasn't in the first 2 weeks of shooting because I wasn't on the bridge for the first 2 weeks. But we now got to the third week of shooting, and we're now down to the tail end of the picture. And this is my very first moment on stage. And I guess I was a little nervous. I thought I had it under control. In any case, just before I went on, they gave me what they considered, in all seriousness, to be what they hoped appeared as a 23rd century bandage to place on my ear. You know, sort of spirit of 76, you know, over one side and down over my ear. And I didn't even look at it carefully. I just stuck it on. I went into the elevator, preparing myself for this moment of heroism. After all, I just pulled myself off out of sick bay and stumbled into the elevator and stumbled onto the bridge because loyalty and duty and love of ship and captain, admiral, etc. are all very important. And I stepped out and I moved forward towards the railing, and I didn't get a word out before Admiral Kirk is rolling on the floor. Mr. Spock, tears in his eyes. Everybody is laughing hysterically. First thing I did after no problem there. Well, it turns out that the thing they put on my ear, wrapped in a bandage, was nothing else, my hand to God, nothing else than a falsie. I don't mean it looked like a falsie. I mean, it was a breast pad with a cute little nipple on it. It was we're not going on. Stop right here. Well, having recovered from that moment, we went into the makeup and they got some prosthetic thing to stick in my ear. So okay, now I'm all set. No longer got the bandage on, and I didn't realize that I was still recovering from this traumatic episode. After all, my first day on the set, everybody's laughs at me. I get the elevator, steel myself again, jaws firm, teeth clenched, eyes steely, and I step out and I say, "Can you put the things out of that?" There's Admiral Kirk, going on the floor. Mr. Spock. I just blew it completely. It's completely blew it. I know I can only get better after that.
Which you like better, acting or writing?
Well, they satisfy different needs. It's sort of apples and oranges. Acting is a visceral vocation. Comes from the gut a lot. And writing is a more intellectual, and I feel there are times when I've got to exercise both those areas. I think at this point in my life, if I could write a truly terrific screenplay, I would get more satisfaction out of that and have it produced than doing a really terrific part and doing it well. I think that's the way I feel. Yeah. Yes. Well, it's not fair. It's only not. It's not fair only because he's not here to defend himself. And I don't think on that basis it's. Bill has a very strong sense of his own. Very talented actor. He is, to a great extent, the reason for the success of the show. He carries it. Without him, there wouldn't be any Star Trek. They wouldn't make it. They didn't have him. I mean, he is what we call the money player. And with that comes an added sense of self-importance. It's almost impossible not to have it. It's almost impossible. Perhaps the exceptional human being who has a very objective view of life and is extraordinarily mature can respond under all circumstances in an even-headed manner. But if you're constantly being fawned over and pandered to, and the response is always excessive, and they're all giving you all that money, it's very, very difficult not to let it affect you in some degree. Understanding all of that, it was still difficult to deal with him at times. I'm sure he feels that I'm a total asshole, so what can I do? Yeah.
I've heard that there's going to be a renewal TV movie ready to close off the Star Lost series. I was wondering if you want to recreate your role.
What I had heard was that they're taking a bunch of the episodes of Star Lost and making it into a feature.
Yeah, they're doing that. They're thinking about going to the footage to close it off.
Really? How are they going to...
Well, obviously it's your help.
Well, because I know that the young lady who was the regular on the show, she's living in Los Angeles now and is about giving up acting. Keir Delay, I don't know where he is. He's probably in London or England or something. I don't know if these would be available. It's an awful long time. In fact, the last time, well, not the last time I was here, the first time I was here, in 1973, I had just come from Toronto, filming an episode. I just come in that day. So that we're talking 11 years ago. I don't think people are, besides which everybody would look considerably different. God knows. Yeah.
Are you planning on publishing any more books?
I don't have anything in mind at present. That doesn't mean that at some point in the future I might not like to try again. I don't want to do any more Chekov's Enterprise kind of things. That was fun and I enjoyed it thoroughly. But having done it once, I have no desire to repeat it. Yes?
If the Enterprise is destroyed in the past movie, do you think they'll still try and put out new TV series?
Well, this is science fiction. There seems to be some conjecture as to about the possibility of Mr. Spock returning. If we can bring back a half-human, if we do bring back a half-human, half-Vulcan, it's certainly easy enough to construct another Enterprise, if we destroy the Enterprise. I think it's all such nonsense, but I was here during this live presentation, and a lot of you really don't want to know, so I'm not going to tell you. But, and of course, I've been asked not to. we're gonna know in 2 months. You know, June 1st is not so far away. Somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Yes.
Well, after the motion picture, a lot of people have a negative opinion about it. What was your opinion?
Star Trek: The Motion Picture? Well, I think it was a valiant effort. It failed. I think that in terms of pure science fiction, it was closer to the genre than Star Trek II was. I think I think the concept was more science fiction. I think the concept of Star Trek II, you could extrapolate and put it into any setting. You can put it into the Old West, you can put it into a modern day detective story. It's a very formula story. The difference is that it was executed with perfection, to perfection. Star Trek II, very well done. I think the idea behind Star Trek I was noble. The problem was that we did not have a finished script when we started shooting. We didn't have a third act. A third of the film wasn't written.
Yeah, in your interview, it said that every 3 hours they were changing.
Yeah, they really were. We were getting, when they changed a scene, they changed the color of the paper. They'd gone through every single color and were back to white again because we had so many revisions. And we had scenes that just had not been written. And they painted themselves into a corner. They started out with a formidable, more than formidable, an almost omnipotent adversary, which is the makings of great conflict, that kind of force against the Enterprise and its crew. And then by the time they got halfway through it, they had changed it from something ignoble to something almost ecclesiastic, almost religious. And it was going to, and they made the determination that it was going to survive. Well, the bad guys don't generally survive, so they couldn't make it a bad guy. So instead of the end of the picture where everybody should have been riveted to the edge of their seats, as we came to this extraordinary climax, this confrontation, you were left instead with this sense of awe, which is hardly the kind of theatrical ending that makes a dynamic for dynamic viewing. The picture fell apart, and for that was certainly one of the reasons. I think a decision should have been made that V'ger was the guy in the black hat, and that it had to be destroyed or destroy us. Or if it wasn't going to do that, then there should have been some other secondary plot aspect of the Klingons trying to get a hold of it, or somebody else trying to get a hold of it, somebody that we could focus on as the bad guy. You need conflict. That's the basis of any good storytelling. And we didn't have that. Then in addition, as Gary said during the slideshow, there were all sorts of problems with the special effect company. Indeed, Doug Trumbull did rescue us, but not without some sacrifice. He is apparently very much enamored of long panoramic shots, special effects shots. They go on ad infinitum, ad nauseum, ad absurdum. And I think the picture suffered from 22 minutes of walking around, moving around the Enterprise and going into V'ger. But that wasn't the primary problem. That was just an added problem. Yes.
Were there any screenplays or stories that the writers or screenplay writers gave that they wanted to make into a second or third season episode, but they just never bothered filming them?
Oh, there are plenty. There are plenty of episodes that were written either in story outline or first draft that were.
Involved the character?
Oh, that involved my character? Probably. I don't recall offhand. I know that it was really a mistake to look at a first draft of an episode, because in the first draft you had all these wonderful lines and this wonderful things to do, and by the time you saw the final draft, Captain Kirk was doing them. So it was disheartening to look at the early versions of the screenplay. Yes?
Yes, in the Wrath of Khan, how old was Admiral Kirk supposed to be?
Well, there had been a line in the screenplay that was excised, that he was 50, that he was taken out. Somebody didn't like it.
How old were you?
Why did you write Chekhov's episode?
Why did I? Why did I? I wrote it because I was encouraged to by a couple of people. I didn't know if I'd be on the film long enough to make a book-length journal, but as it turned out, the 5 weeks that I was contracted for became 16, and it was a great way to spend the time. And finally, because when I realized that I couldn't be the star of the movie, I figured at least I could be the star of the book. So that's the reason why I wrote it. I thought it would be a marketable item, marketable if I did it well. Yes.
At the last creation convention in UN was down, we asked him how Scotty would handle the enterprise if he was in command. How do you think Chekov would handle the enterprise if he was in command? What would he allow and not allow?
Well, I'm thinking he'd first have a big party. What? Yes. I haven't given that a great deal of thought. I think, basically, I think he is a man of responsibility, and I'm sure he would carry out his orders, carry out his duties in a, oh, what the hell, I don't know. I'm sure he would acquit himself in a worthy fashion. Somebody who hasn't raised their hand. In the back.
Yeah, going back when you were talking about conflicts earlier, it's strict reference to Trouble with Tribbles. Is if they do bring out the next film and if they do decide to go into another television series, will there be any interplay between you with your fierce Russian pride and James Doohan and his Scottish pride?
At this point, I would say no. I think they decided that, although I thought it was a good hook for the character of Chekov. People, in those days used to always comment on that. I think they feel that is a passé thing to do, for Chekov to involve in some of that kind of thing. That it was perhaps sophomoric humor, and that because of the sensitivity of this current world situation, it probably would not be a good idea to draw too much attention, or additional attention to the fact that he's Russian. I think that there is a sensitivity, that it feels sensitivity. Although I must say that in Star Trek III, it was Leonard's determination on the set to change a couple of my lines from English to Russian, which I thought was a nice piece of business. So when you hear me say "Yam Yesumacheki Nubo," you'll really know that means I'm not crazy. So there. Yes.
Do you think Star Trek is competing with Star Wars?
Competing?
Yeah.
I suppose so. We're going to be brought up for comparison, as they were with us. I think, there's I think we've both done each other a service. Star Wars was written originally, I'm sure, inspired by Star Trek, by the success of Star Trek. But we were never going to go into a movie. But when the success of Star Wars eventuated, the studio finally realized that Star Trek might indeed be also a successful entry into this particular genre. So we helped them get started, and they brought us from dormancy to life again. Yeah.
In the movie Star Trek, the motion picture, why were the uniforms changed so many times? They changed them.
Well, the first concept was, I believe it was Gene's. Gene Roddenberry. He wanted the military look. I happen to like those costumes. I know you people, I heard you all booing and hissing before. I happen to like those costumes. They were comfortable. I thought they looked good on us. They weren't very colorful, but I thought they were good costumes. The same costume designer designed the costumes for Star Trek too. But with a different man at the helm, a decision was made to make them more colorful. And I guess as a response to the reaction of the fans to the Star Trek I costumes. Incidentally, so you are not misled, we do have the same uniforms in Star Trek III. We have the same uniforms. We have, in addition, we have civilian clothes. And that's why the costumes are different in Star Trek III. It's not that we've changed the uniforms, it's just we have additional wearing apparel. I have not seen Star Trek III. There have been some previews where they've picked people up off the street on Hollywood Boulevard and said, you want to come down to Paramount Studios and look at the film. And they've done it at least once. There have been several viewings, but to my knowledge, the cast has not yet been invited. I think the thing that is not yet completed is the scoring. James Horner is doing the scoring. And my understanding is that they should be very close to being done, but perhaps they're not done yet. I wouldn't be surprised if we got a call in the next couple of weeks and we're invited to see a screening of the movie. I know that they're certainly on schedule or ahead of schedule. Yeah?
In the futuristic sequel, do you think Gene Roddenberry himself will ever become hired as executive consultant? Will he ever, like, maybe be a producer or director? Or
Well, he has been the executive consultant, which is a euphemism. It doesn't really mean a whole lot. Somebody very recently asked me if he'd be interested in coming back as a producer again. And he expressed the feeling that he had made his peace with Star Trek and was not prepared at this point to involve himself. Now, that doesn't mean he might not want to. I don't think he's ever directed, so I don't think he'd want to direct. He might want to write, but I don't think he would ever want to produce it again. He got a lot of flack from the studio. They didn't make his life easy. It was a tough situation.
Were you invited to see the return of the Shuttle Enterprise?
No. No, I didn't. I wasn't invited, nor did I see it. The only thing I was invited to was the rollout. And as I say in the book, it was an extraordinary experience for me. It was just marvelous. Okay, so yeah.
Do you plan on doing any other acting or any other?
I always plan on it. Whether or not it happens is not entirely in my hands. The last thing I did was in December, and it was a production of Antony and Cleopatra. I think that's Will now. With a very interesting cast. Lynn Redgrave played Cleopatra. A marvelous actor named Timothy Dalton played Antony. And Tony Geary played Octavius Caesar. Tony Geary, of course, from General Hospital. Much to my surprise and my delighted surprise, he was quite good. I guess the soaps are no reflection of talent because no, I don't mean that. I don't mean that facetiously. I guess the problems involved in doing a soap, memorizing dialogue on a daily basis, 20, 30 pages, and coming in and shooting the next day, really do affect reality performances. Yeah. So he was very good, and I played Pompey, and it was a marvelous experience for me. I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Did you do anything before Star Trek?
Pardon?
Did you do anything before Star
Well, here, let me finish this one, please. Other than that, Mark Leonard and I have been touring with a play called Actors, and we've done it. We did it in Cincinnati. We did it in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We did it in another play called Box and Cox. We performed it in Los Angeles at a college. We're going to do it in Los Angeles at a Creation Starlog convention, and the Starlog is going to cover it in a feature article with production pictures. And we're going to do it again in Boston. So we have that going. And before Star Trek, yes, I worked a great deal before Star Trek. I worked far more before Star Trek than I did afterwards. But then I was a kid, and I looked like a kid, and there were a lot more roles available to me. In fact, I understand that they're rerunning the Hitchcock series, the Hitchcock Hour series, and the show that I did, curiously enough, Harlan Ellison wrote, called Limos from Purgatory, has been on, and I did a lead on that opposite Jimmy Caan, who I went to school with, James Caan. So there was a lot of work before Star Trek.
How did you feel about Robin Kurtz's personality?
Well, Robin's a lovely person and a good actress. I don't think she has quite the unique physical look that Kirsty had. No. I just mean, you look at Kirsty's face, and she looks like she might be, unearthly. Robin is a good actress, and I'm sure she puts herself well. Again, the scenes that she had that were a test of her ability, I wasn't on the set at the time, so I didn't actually see her work. But everybody seemed very satisfied, very happy with her. But she doesn't have quite that interesting look, I think. She's very attractive, but not in that unearthly manner. Yes?
In the Star Trek 3, do the Klingons appear as they did in the motion picture? Do their heads change differently? Do they speak English, or
No, it's pretty much the way they were in Star Trek 1. They have bumps, and they talk in Koenig with translation. There's also some Vulcan spoken, and that's also with translation. Yes?
Can you tell us just a little bit about your family?
My family?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm married, my wife is an actress. My 2 children, my son is 15, my daughter is 11. They both want to be performers. The last thing my son did was he danced on the People's Choice Awards, not this year but last year. My daughter has worked on television as a dancer, and several years ago, the Shirley MacLaine special, and she has done some theater work in town. They're terrific kids, and that's about it. Yeah.
Didn't you do a play based on Alien or an adaptation of the movie Alien
Oh,
a few years back?
well, it wasn't a play. A friend of mine named Bob Burns has a tradition. He lives not too far from me, and every Halloween, or many Halloweens, he would enact a science fiction or horror film for the general public. And there was no admission charge, and they would line up for blocks. We'd have 1,500 people in a night as part of the Halloween event. He did The Exorcist, and I'm rushed to add that he had totally professional people helping him, building the sets. Mike Miner, who did the sets, designed a lot of the sets for Star Trek 1 and 2. Yeah, 1 and 2 would help him out. They were all people who were in the business. I mean, not just, weekend workmen, but really professional people. And so they did some extraordinary things. And the last time I volunteered to participate, and we did a scene from Alien where the captain, I don't remember his name, Dallas, comes down this long corridor and gets jumped by a face hugger, and then there's attack. It was very, very effective. It was covered in all the networks and in some magazines as well. Yeah, that was just a scene. It took about 5-6 minutes. The thing is, when you do it 200 times in an evening, it gets to be a little wearisome. Okay, I think we have time for about 4 or 5 more questions. Yes?
What did you think of your character as in Spectre of the Gun?
That was fun. I enjoyed that. Spectre of the Gun. Yeah. There's a story that goes with that. That was between the 2nd and 3rd year. I went to see Gene, and I asked him if they had any additional plans for Chekov. That certainly the reaction would seem to provoke Chekov to do more. The reaction was that positive. I was covered a lot in teen magazines. There was an enormous amount of mail, more than anybody but the 2 leads at one point. And he said, indeed, and he showed me a memo from the NBC executives to the producers of Star Trek. And it was to the effect that we should take advantage of Chekov's popularity and write more episodes for him, more love interests, more this, more that, get him involved in a more important way. Well, I was overjoyed. And then Gene showed me a memo from him to his executives about how they could go forward with that notion. And Spectre of the Gun was the first show that was written under that memo. However, then there was a sequence of events that changed all of our lives, I'm sure, beginning with the fact that Laugh-In, which had been a mid-season replacement the year before, had really caught on. It really caught fire. And they had been scheduled in the new season to go on at 10 o'clock on Friday nights. And they protested. And they had the power of this enormous popularity to weight their argument. And the easiest switch at that late date was to take Star Trek, which was scheduled for 8 o'clock Mondays, and put it 10 o'clock Friday. Well, in effectively then, not only did we shift it to the graveyard time slot, but it had a very serious effect on my particular following. Because at that point, my following was the bubblegum set, the very young kids, and I suppose some adolescents as well. Well, the bubblegum kids were going to bed. They were in bed by 10 o'clock, and the adolescents were out, doing what adolescents do. So when that transpired, the whole idea of making Chekov a more important character sort of got lost. In addition, Gene became furious with the network and withdrew his promise to become actively involved as he had been in the first season. He promised that he would be actively involved and keep a tight rein on the proceedings in the third season. But he got very upset and fed up, and he said, "To heck with it," and he left for all intents and purposes. So, Spectre the Gun would have heralded the kind of episodes, the kind of involvement I would have had in the third year had that change not been made. Yeah.
Can you tell me who in the third movie plays the Supreme Commander, so to speak?
I think it's a fellow from, well, not the Supreme Commander. What's his name? I'm sorry?
You know the role.
Yeah, I don't know if he's the Supreme Commander. Pardon? James Seeking plays the captain of the Excelsior, but he's not the top guy. There is another fellow, and I can't remember his name.
Admiral Nagura.
No, it's not Nagora. At least, I don't know if he's the Supreme Commander, but he's the top man in our story. He's the one that gives Kirk a hard time. Yeah.
The person who plays Sarek in the new movie, is he the same person who plays Sarek in?
That's Mark Leonard, yes. And he's marvelous. He's marvelous. I think he has a couple of scenes with Bill, and they're very, very exciting, dynamic moments on screen.
I also wanted to know, I've heard that during this season when it was filmed, that because Leonard Nimoy went with such long periods of time without showing emotion, that sometimes he would just break down with emotional outbursts because the toll it took on his system and then the showing emotion.
That has got to be the biggest crock I've ever heard. I don't know where you got that, but I can tell you that without any hesitancy that is not true. He played the character without emotion, and he carried that off screen, but he did not have any tantrums or any breakdowns as a consequence. Yeah.
What are your feelings on Star Trek 3 from just reading the script?
I wasn't that impressed from reading the script. Mainly probably because I wasn't impressed with the character, the way the character was written, and it probably did, to a considerable degree, color my reaction. I am, after all, only human, and I am capable of human foible and weakness and all that pettiness that everybody else is, and probably did have an effect on my reaction. However, I cannot deny the response that I've heard since the filming is finished, and that is that we have an eminently successful film here, and that it will probably, if there's any justice, it will do more box office than either of the others. Well, that's what I keep hearing, that it's going to be better than Star Trek 2, and from some people whose opinions I got here. So I think you guys are in for an exciting adventure when Star Trek 3 hits the screen. And speaking of hitting, time to hit the autograph line, I guess. Pardon? Out in front of the dealer's room. I'll see you all there. Come on.